Alrighty, welcome to another video. We're focusing now on the first section of the Paper 1 exam, the unseen text section. And the aim of this video is to outline what is going to happen in this section in a bit more detail, and also to give you some advice on how to answer some of the low mark and the mid mark questions. Some of the higher mark questions we'll get to later on, but we'll just focus on the easier ones first. Now, I recommend that if you haven't watched the video on the structure of the whole of Paper 1 exam, then I suggest that you do that now. And just to acknowledge my own sources as well, a lot of this content has been adapted from some materials that Miss Kremen's made, and obviously I've kind of converted them into a video form just to help you guys out. So first of all, the first type of question that you're going to receive is called a what type question. Now these questions are usually quite low in marks, only between 1 to 2 marks. And these are the easy questions. These are the given questions to help you settle into the exam and just to kind of test your basic understanding of the type of discovery within the text that you're reading, the purpose of the text, the audience of the text, or the concept of discovery that's being represented in the text. And they're usually quite short in the response that you give to them. Some examples of some questions that you'll receive, just so you've got a bit of an idea, is, for example, what is the purpose of this text? That might be worth 1 mark. You may have to explore the concept of discovery represented in this text. So you pick one concept from the rubric and then you discuss it, how it's represented in the text. Or 3, you might have to identify a feature of the text. For example, for this one, you identify emotions or feelings about discovery represented in the text. The second type of questions are what I'm going to call the how type questions. So these questions are a little bit trickier. They usually stump students about what they're asking, and they're usually worth between 2 to 4 marks. Now, these questions require you to show how meaning is created by analyzing, explaining, and commenting, or even identifying some of the specific visual and written techniques that the composer has used. Now, the question may not reference language techniques, but if the question is a how type question, you will need to analyze either the visual or the written techniques depending on what type of text it is. Now, this is critically important because you can't get more than 1 mark, even if the question is worth 3 or 4 marks. You can't get more than 1 mark if you don't mention techniques. So it's so important that you know that and that you do that. A basic structure of what you do in these questions is you identify a technique that's used, you give an example of that technique, and then you show how the composer uses the technique to tell us something about the discovery that you've found in the text. An example of some questions might be, how is discovery represented in this text? The clue about techniques is in the start of the question with the how, which is always referring to how the text has been made to show discovery. Or 2, it may be quite explicit and say, well, you need to choose 2 language techniques or choose 2 techniques in the text and explain how they support an idea about discovery. They're basically exactly the same question, but once they have told you to do techniques and the other one they haven't, but they're asking for it without telling you. So they might try and trick you on that one. Finally, the third type of question that you may ask could be an evaluative question. So evaluate the effectiveness of language techniques to represent an aspect of discovery. Now that requires you to use evaluative language, which is even trickier, but to basically give your opinion on how effective the text is at presenting the concept of discovery. Alrighty, and the third type of question that you'll receive, I'm going to call synthesis type questions. Now synthesis means basically when you bring 2 things together and you combine them together. So in this case, we're bringing 2 different perspectives on 2 different texts, and we're bringing them together into one succinct and awesome answer. So we're looking to actually combine 2 different texts. Now this is actually quite hard to do, and it's why we're going to focus on the easier questions first, but that's the main picture that you need to see, that you need to bring together 2 different understandings of the text. These questions are always worth between 4 to 6 marks, and these questions require you to analyze different perspectives of discovery in different texts. A few examples of some synthesis type questions that you may receive could be, compare and contrast the ways the concept of discovery is explored in two texts. In your discussion, comment on the form and features of both texts, which basically means the structure of the texts, and also things like language techniques or visual techniques. And 2, explore the ways two texts give a perspective on the concept of discovery. All right, so now we've covered what's in the exam, and I'm going to model to you how we're actually going to answer these questions. All right, so here's the process we're going to use. First, we're going to start off and we'll read the question and identify the question type. Next, we'll read the text. Thirdly, we'll identify aspects of discovery in the text. 4, we'll identify some techniques that highlight those aspects of discovery. And 5th, we'll answer the question. And this step-by-step process can be applied to every single question in the unseen text exam. The question is, identify one aspect of discovery that is revealed in this poster and explain how techniques are used to convey this aspect. You'll hopefully recognize that this question is actually a combination between a what type question and a how type question. So the what type is in the first part of the question where it says identify one aspect of discovery that is revealed in the poster, because identify basically means to point out. And the second part of the question, explain how techniques are used to convey this aspect, is a how type question. So we actually have a combination question between both types. And next we have to think about what aspects of discovery can we find in this text. And for me, the main one is that curiosity sparks discovery. This girl is obviously peeking through the lock and is curious to find out what she's going to discover behind that lock. So I'm going to talk about how curiosity is an aspect of discovery that is represented in this text. And I need to focus now on some language features and some visual features of this text that will help me explain that. To answer this question, I'm going to use a visual text. So this visual text is of a poster called The Secret Garden. And some of the features that you can see here is that there's a clear door and garden in the foreground. In the background, behind the lock, you can see what seems to be a small girl's eye. Some main other features are the dove, which is a symbol, a well-known symbol for peace. There's descriptive language in the heading, The Secret Garden, where secret is a descriptive word. And finally, the eye of the girl is a demand, and it is demanding the audience's attention. So there's 5 techniques. So now that I've done all those features, now I need to answer the question. So here is my answer to the question. Pause the video and take some time to read it through a few times, and then we'll consider whether I've answered the question correctly. Right, so have I answered this question correctly to get the full marks? Number 1, have I identified an aspect of discovery? Yes. In the first sentence, I say that curiosity is a catalyst for discovery to occur. And now I need to talk about some techniques that reveal this aspect, that curiosity is a catalyst. And I mention a few techniques and then I sum up their effects. So I mention the fact that the girl's positioned in the center as the focal point, but she's also in the background behind the lock. Her demanding eye engages the audience. So 1, she's in the center, and 2, her engaging eye engages the audience. So the focus is on the girl, and it communicates her curiosity for the discovery that lies on the other side of the door in the foreground, thus implying that curiosity is an important key to initiate discovery. So all of these features, the focus is on the girl and the fact that she's looking through and demanding the audience's attention, but also it makes the audience go, well, what is actually behind that door? Now we don't know, and obviously the girl doesn't know because she's behind the door, the locked door, and thus we have our aspect of discovery, that curiosity for what is behind the door is a catalyst for discovery to occur. And I've used Peel in a very succinct way, kind of blending some example and explain sentences in there, and I've got a link sentence right at the end. 2 marks, there we go.